All right. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today's guest, Erika Andresen. Erika is the disaster special.
Pause.
Er-
Pause.
Yep.
You have a typo. What you're not doing, should be YOU''RE.
All
So I don't
right.
know. It's one of those things you can fix now because I've been on a podcast where we went through the whole thing. He had the wrong banner underneath my name. He's like, we have to re-record everything. I can't edit that afterwards.
Roger that. Well, we're live, so I will edit it later for you. We're live at the moment. Cool. All righty. Well, welcome to the show, everyone. This is Erika Andresen. She is the disaster strategist your business wishes it had before everything went sideways. A recovering lawyer, military veteran, and certified business continuity professional, Erika is the founder of the veteran-owned EAASC, where she helps companies stop hoping for the best and start planning for the worst. She's the author of the Amazon bestsellers, including the hard-hitting How Not to Kill Your Business and her brand new book, When the Shit Hits the Fan, a book born of real-world disasters and the struggles of Hurricane Helene survivors in her hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. With a resume that includes advising military leaders, lecturing at MIT, and being quoted everywhere from Forbes to Success Magazine, Erika is a crisis-tested expert who teaches leaders how to build resilience before they need it. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Erika.
Hi. Thank you.
Hey. Hey, I'm super excited to have you on the show. Erika does something that is really important, which is continuity planning. We as leaders don't talk about this enough. We talk about risk management. We're going to get that into the show. But first, let me tell you why I enjoy Erika so much. She's a recovering lawyer. So in the coaching community, people have all sorts of different resumes, but Erika has really done it in the military. She has done it for companies for years now, for I think over a decade. And then I got introduced to her through Daniel Andrews, who's a dear friend of both of ours. Erika's just fantastic. And so Erika, it's fun to have you on the show here.
Thank you, Drew. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump into it. First, it is the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. So let's do a John Maxwell leadership quote. This one is the law of, I think we said we're going to do the law of, I guess we're going to do the law of magnetism. Who you are is who you attract. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a big theme for me is authenticity. And I find that I was actually talking about this with a couple of veterans the other day about certain things that we do in service, and sacrificing who you are as a person and your core in order to appease something else is, while you can see on paper how that might work out, it actually is pretty bad for you as a person, as to take down your authenticity and therefore how you are as a leader. Because if you're not showing up authentically, it's very hard to get people to follow you and to fall in line and to be the best that they can be for you and with you, not just for you, but also with you. And I find that that's true in any type of situation, not just the military. So with leadership, having that, when you're authentic, you wind up attracting the most amazing people who are also authentic. And it's not about perfection. It's always about authenticity. As long as you're striving in the most authentic way toward a common goal, the amount of people who are going to hop on that ride with you are just amazing.
Yeah, totally agree. I heard somebody say about 5 years ago, I heard this statement that honor is the only gift you give yourself. So to live authentically is the gift you give yourself. Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, all right. So you are a black swan lady. I love the black swan concept from Nassim Taleb. He writes the book Black Swan. For those that aren't familiar, the idea is in Europe, there was a statement, aren't swans white or white as a swan? And the idea was that every swan anybody had ever seen was all white until some sailors made it all the way down to Australia. And in Australia, there is a black swan. So what was common knowledge, known to be true, was so true that it was used as a colloquialism, turned out to be false. And the black swan changed everything. So Nassim Taleb talks about how that happens in financial markets, but as a business owner, as a leader, you have to be planning for those black swan events in your business. So why don't you open that up for us?
Right. So yeah, the black swan event is basically the thing that you're not expecting to hit you, but it's going to hit you, and you're not preparing for it because you're not thinking about it. And it doesn't have to be something as catastrophic as, and examples of black swan events would be something like 9/11 or the financial crash of 2008 or the housing bubble burst. These are anything that's just you're not thinking about, you're going to get rocked by. And you're like, well, how can I prepare for that? Thing is, having a readiness mindset, having prepared, having starting to think about things in a certain way puts you in a state of, I wonder if this would happen. I wonder if this would happen. So it kind of gets into risk management and a risk analysis where you're looking at what would be unlikely but have an incredible impact, and think about, well, what would you do for that? And just in case, have something. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the gray rhino. Have you?
No, not the gray rhino.
So the gray rhino is the thing that everybody knows is there, but they're not talking about.
Ah,
So it's like,
okay.
we acknowledge this is a thing. We absolutely see this coming. We're just going to keep our heads in the sand about it and not do anything until we're forced to. And normally it's too late when you're forced to.
Yeah, I call that ostriching. I don't even know that ostriches actually put their head in the ground, but that's like such a thing. But so the gray rhino is just the thing that we're ignoring, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So as in a business,
Mm-hmm.
what do people ignore in a business?
Oh my God. Well,
Let's just open it.
wow. I think we could start with how the general mindset works, where psychologically speaking, a lot of people are in this mindset where it's not going to happen to me. So we
Oh
can
yeah.
ignore everything because it's an optimism bias where if I tell you there's a 40% chance of this happening, you're like, I'm in that 60%. But if 100% of the people believe they're in that 60%, that's a mathematical impossibility. So it's going to happen to somebody, and it might be you. So you best be prepared for that. That's
Probability is something that we should all spend time getting better at. So like,
Mhm.
let's say that there's a 40% chance of something happening to me. I play poker with my kids, and I do a lot of strategy games, but so there's a lot of dice rolling in my life and a
Mhm.
lot of card playing. And yeah, 40% is not a great bet. I mean, like
Right.
sometimes you have to make the bet, but yeah, 40% is not a good bet. That's pretty unsafe, actually.
Right. And there are things where it was one of the things I wrote about in my newer book. I talk about how we don't really understand risk language, and it's not your fault because it's not been explained to you, or it's being used by sources you trust that don't actually know what they're talking about. So, for example, I talk about like floodplains. We talk about 1,000-year flood plain. What does that mean to you? Most people assume, oh, that flood's not happening for at least 1,000 years, and the next one won't happen for another 1,000 years or close to that. But that was language created by civil engineers for civil engineers. But you don't hear it from civil engineers. You hear it from weather people. You hear it from news people. You hear it from politicians. But no one's actually explaining it. So you are left in a mindset where you feel that you have this sense of security that you don't actually have because you don't understand how it works. And I give an example. Ellicott City, Maryland in 2016 had 1,000-year flood. Ellicott City, Maryland in 2018 had 1,000-year flood, 2 years apart. So that can happen within 2 years, not 1,000 years. And if you
Yeah.
understand just how bad that risk is, then you're like, oh, I actually have to do something about this, or I should be doing something about this.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. This is an internal joke between my wife and I. We call some people butter side down people. So like imagine the toast, and the toast always falls butter side down.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if you have people in your life, but I have certain people in my life. I don't know what the calamity is going to be, but I guarantee you that there's going to be one. And and then I have other people who actually call Scott McIntosh because there's a good friend of mine named Scott, and Scott just like almost lived a charmed life. I'm not saying that he had a perfect life, but like he just did everything right. He like just succeeded a whole lot. So
Mhm.
there's Scott McIntosh and there's Butterside Down. Um, and one of our relatives is a Butterside Down person, and they were coming to visit us in Texas. And I told my wife, no, I'm not going to go meet them in Arkansas because we were going to meet them halfway. I was like, I'm not meeting because they won't make it. And she was like, there's no possible way you could know that, Drew. And lo and behold, their alternator went out, and we had to go like another hour and a half further to go pick them up. Um, do you see Butterside Down businesses? And what if you had like two or three pieces of advice? What would be your best Scott McIntosh advice to avoid that?
Um, butter side down, but well, calamities. I, I can't pick an exact industry because it applies to every business. Every business can be butter side down if you're not prepared. Um, the Scott McIntosh advice is do something in advance and literally do something. do anything. Because once you start with the low hanging fruit, easy things, you're like, oh, well, I've taken care of this. I could do something else. And it makes it less intimidating where you're like, oh my God, this continuity plan, I can't, this is a lot. This is a lot. I'd rather just not deal with this right now. I'll deal with it later. And dealing with it later is a bad thing because as I saw here in Asheville during Hurricane Helene, the do it later leads to you putting up a GoFundMe after a disaster, as opposed to actually being able to not need a GoFundMe because you weren't impacted that badly or you had prepared for it. So what I tell a lot of people is, number one, don't be intimidated by this whole entire process. It is a lot easier than you think. So for example, you do business continuity every day, aspects of you understand the principles. So if you want to go for a run, the first thing you're going to do when you wake up is look at your weather app. And from that piece of data, you're going to make a whole bunch of decisions. You're going to say, what time of day am I going? Because it's going to be raining later, it's going to be raining early. Is it going to be 100 degrees with, 80% humidity? Is it going to be 50 degrees with 10 mile per hour winds? All these, one piece of information impacts how you're going to actually accomplish your goal with the least amount of discomfort possible. That's how I like to explain what business continuity is. It's accomplishing your goal of staying open and operational with the least amount of discomfort possible. I never promise that you'll be fine and happy and giddy along the way. You're not all going to be Scott. You may have some butterside moments, but the fact is your butterside moment, when you say butterside, like my brain always goes to food. So I'm thinking grilled cheese. I want that butterside down on the bread. It's going to be delicious. So turn that butterside down into something like, it's actually fine that we're butterside down. It's fine because now we're something even better because we're stronger.
Yeah, no, I love that. All right. We're going to talk some more continuity planning in a second, but first I want to get into your story. So you're a recovering lawyer, which is why we're friends, and lawyers are all about risk reduction. But talk to me about the path from defending banks in the 2009 crash to where you are today and what motivates you.
So I'd been a corporate lawyer in New York City because I'm originally from New York City. I did that for about 6-7 years. And when the world economy collapsed in 2008 and I was responsible for helping defend the banks who caused it, I was like, this feels kind of icky. At the same time, I was doing pro bono work for veterans. I was like, wow, I'm using my law degree for something awesome and I feel good. And I decided I want to do more like that, but it felt dirty to charge veterans. So the next best thing was to leave corporate law and join the active duty military as a JAG officer. So I did that. And for about 10 years, I did that. But in my active duty time, one of the first duty stations I was at, they were like, hey, you can be the EOC legal advisor at EOC's or Emergency Operations Center. And they go, no big deal. You show up to one meeting a quarter. And I was like, oh, okay. That was a lie because within 2 weeks, there was torrential rain. I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So they had torrential rain, like 4 nights in a row, 2 inches every night. So everything flooded. Okay. And it's now a natural disaster and a state of emergency in the state. And they're like, oh, so the general needs to know this, go advise him. And I'm like, what? Okay, like here's a book. You have a meeting in 2 hours, go. And I was like, okay. And that's how I got my feet wet with emergency management and responding to disasters. And I really, really loved it. And I decided to get an MPA degree, which is like the nonprofit government version of an MBA. And I was like, if I ever got out of the military, it'd be really great to have one of these because I loved doing what I was doing. It was about enabling through authorities, but enabling to help people. And then it just so happened that every job I had in the military after that was doing continuity of operations and missions that dealt with natural disasters. So when I was in Fort Lewis, Washington State, it was wildland fires. When I was in Natick, Massachusetts, it was a pandemic, right? And then I was also in Afghanistan in 2016. And that was like high level risk analysis. My main job was approving the bombs we dropped, but I also was going to the meetings for our missions to go outside the wire, which was always the most likely, least likely, and most deadly course of action, deadly to us because there was always a 50% chance or greater we get killed. So I like to say that my Rorschach ink blot is horrific because my brain has been wired to see very, very terrible things. And then when I was getting out of the military, because I wanted more control over my life, I happened to be walking down the street one day and there was a restaurant that had closed. And I said to my buddy, oh no, they closed. He goes, so what, they suck? I go, no, somebody's dream died and everybody who works for them has to go home and say, I don't have a paycheck anymore to pay rent. And
yes.
And that just crushed me. And I was like, if I can do something to prevent that or to alleviate that, I would love to do that. And then I just wanted to saw the bigger picture of helping businesses. And I had also around the same time read a Business Review article about Superstorm Sandy sufferers. And they asked all these businesses a series of questions, the final question being, what are you doing to prepare for next time? And every single one of them, except one, said, oh, this won't happen again. I was like, oh my God, no,
Yeah.
no. I mean, some of my advice is you don't prepare for the next last, you prepare for the next worst. They're not preparing for the next anything. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And
well, unpopular opinion on this side of the mic. Hurricane Katrina was terrible. I mean, there's a lot of terrible things that were about that, but the entire city of New Orleans is built underwater.
mhm,
So, like, my sympathies as an engineer are not as strong as other people's. Because, and the other thing is that New Orleans didn't just get washed away once. Like, throughout New Orleans' history, but like they take you on tours and they're like, that's where the old city was before it flooded back in like 1700s. You're like,
yeah.
yeah. No, so yeah, you got to prepare for what's coming. You can't just pretend that it's not going to show up.
Right. And the thing with, I felt really driven specific more toward small businesses specifically, is you think about what makes a community thrive, what makes a community worth living in. It's the people, but what draws the people? It's also the businesses that are there, the services they provide to the community. And it's not just like, think about any type of real estate ad. It's bedrooms, square footage, and how far it is to the nearest coffee shop, to the nearest mall, to the nearest shops. That is an attraction for people. And when I talk about people having money to, like, the employees are still employees that can pay for the things they have to. They also have money to buy things that make their life awesome and worth living. And everybody deserves to have that. And when they're spending money on other businesses because they're getting services from them, that cycle of all these businesses staying continuous and enhancing the community continues. And it's because, and it's not like I don't think I'm a puppet master. I educate business owners about this system and this process, and I empower them to be able to thrive during any type of situation, any kind of disruption or interruption. It's not just natural disasters.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. One is I'm on some development councils here in my local area, and we're asking the questions: how do we grow the bluegrass? How do we, develop? How do we attract top talent? All those questions that city planners should be asking. And one of the big ones is nightlife. Is fun? Is sporting events? It's culture. It's running trails, hiking trails.
Mhm.
Is it a fun city to live in? In Leif, a good friend of mine who's been on the show, he encapsulated it the best. He said, it's the arts, man. People will do business in your city like because of talent, but they'll stay in your city because of the arts. And I was
Mhm.
like, what a profound thought. And what you're doing is a piece of the arts, which is all the small businesses that have dreams that make a place vibrant to live. And keeping them afloat is a really cool mission.
Well, I can even be specific to arts. In Asheville, the River Arts District got completely destroyed by Helene. So all those artists in the galleries are gone. And the
Yeah.
thing that was very unfortunate for me is I was like, how could I have helped these people? Because they were on a river that floods. The river was already flooded before Helene showed up because we had an unfortunately timed rain event for the preceding 36 hours. It rained for 36 hours before Helene showed up.
Oh,
And
good.
yeah, if that didn't happen, Helene wouldn't have been as bad because everything was already saturated and partially flooded to begin with.
Mm,
And when I'm watching the New York Times reel of these business owners going back into their business for the first time, and they said, oh my God, nobody told us it would be more than 10 feet. And I was like, what? I was puzzled because I wanted to know who they were listening to because I knew that was a Friday. The Helene hit on Friday morning. I knew on Wednesday afternoon that it was going to be more than 20 feet. And it from free publicly available information. And I had even I'm like, I know I knew this before. I checked a text that I sent my friend whose parents lived across from one of the breweries. I said, tell them to get out. It's going to be more than 20 feet and probably worse. And it went up in certain areas, went up to 27 feet. And
goodness gracious.
this was publicly available information, and it upsets me. If they were my clients, I would have said, listen, whatever you're doing, stop. It's not going to work, except that you're going to lose your building. And then take whatever you need out of it and move it somewhere much higher elevation, not in the building, like way out of the neighborhood. So you can either start fresh, but not completely from scratch, or pivot from something else because you will lose your building. And it would have hurt so much less if they had that heads up. And it upsets me that the city did not alert them to that. Or like again, who are they listening to?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that goes to the gray rhino is it's hard to imagine something's true. Uh, because of the consequences. I had a conversation. This is many a political cycle ago, and somebody said, I was talking with somebody on the other side of the aisle, and they said, no, that can't be true, because if that was true, then it would mean that there's injustice in the political system. And I'm not pulling a political leg here, but what I'm pointing out is that his logic in our disagreement was that if I was right, it would imply some really horrible things. And I was like, yeah, that is so. So many times we choose to believe our truth because the consequences of the other guy's truth is too dramatic to consider.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to another story about getting your stuff out. So a specific business that could have made a much bigger impact. But first, because you've been skating on this topic, and I think it's germane to our society today, I think that maybe continuity planning might be the cure for anxiety. What are your thoughts on that?
I think first you need to have a healthy dose of anxiety to be good at continuity. So you need to think about what's going on, what's worrying. Like, I'm used to it. It doesn't make me anxious. So I'm calm about it. I'm like, this might happen. This could happen. Have we thought about this? And what it does is it definitely puts you in a position to feel calmer, or it's not even like, I got this in a super, super, super confident, obnoxious way, but it's like, I feel comfortable with what's about to happen because I prepared for it. And, even with like my own personal preparations for Helene, I started preparing on Wednesday for the storm coming on Friday with my food, taking all the stuff that can blow around from outside in. I figured out how to get my car out of my garage with the power out because I wanted it in the garage during the storm, but out afterwards. Planning, getting all my water, all the stuff. And I was anticipating 3 to 4 days without power, without water. It was much longer than that, but I was like, okay, even as I hit day 4, I was like, okay, I have some new things I need to recalibrate, I need to rethink. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I was still okay, but there was a lot of stuff, and it wound up taking a lot of my like mental energy to be continuously vigilant. I didn't realize how much it took out of me until I fled to Charleston for a few days once the roads opened after 5 days. My sister's like, Erika, you deserve to take a shower and to flush the toilet when you use it. Go, please go. Because I wasn't going to go. She's like, go. And I was like, okay. And then I took a shower and I wanted to pass out. And I'm like, why am I so tired? Because I was like safe at that point. And if you have I can't even imagine if I hadn't been prepared, what I would have been like. My sister's like, I'm not you. I'm not a prepper. I wouldn't have lasted the first day.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I was a model for other people. Like, I remember I was talking to a friend who I met because of the storm, because all you could do is walk around afterwards. And she said, it was funny when we met you, we're like, wow, this is a really confident woman who knows what she's talking about. And I was like, really? Is that what you thought? Because apparently in my mind, I was already in like emergency management Erika mode, and just, the way I was talking to people. And I was like, I didn't even realize I was doing that. She's like, oh yeah. We're like, we got to stay friends with her.
Oh, so what's a scream about that is when you're prepared, when you're thinking ahead of things, the outward appearance makes it look like you're calm, even though we as leaders have the same stress, which is, it speaks to our need as leaders to prepare and to have an outward veil of calm. But it also speaks to those that are not as prepared. Just because somebody looks calm doesn't mean they aren't having the same emotions as you. They just are processing them differently.
Yes.
Emotions are signals, right? Emotions are not directives. Emotions are signals that say, hey, you should do something here. I have a friend, his name is Brian, and he has a really great system. But one of the nuggets that he dropped in my head about a year ago was that leaders are concern generators. So as you get more responsibility for things, could just be your first house, it could be your team at work, could be your business, could be your community, you naturally generate more concerns. The more stuff that you're a leader of or that you own, the more concerns you generate. And people think that, oh man, that must be so stressful. You must be so anxious. But actually the concerns are the fuel for your productivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you make that switch, that concerns are just the fuel for your productivity, man, it's a game changer, because you start getting those thoughts. You're like, oh, I should move the car in the garage, out of the garage. I should get this. I should do that. And those become, when you act on them, those become little pieces of the momentum flywheel that keep you going and staying above the fray that everybody has to live in.
Yeah, I know. Well, so one of the things, not just about being able to prepare or business continuity. It makes things feel like business as usual because you've already laid the groundwork for it. And you're
Yes.
okay. So it's not a, I like to use the example of, 5-alarm fires. How often do you hear about them? Hardly ever, because they make the news when it's a big deal. But does that mean the fire department's not doing their job every day, that they're not going on calls a couple times a week? They are. It's just business as usual because it's something they can handle. It's not disastrous. And it's only that way because they prepared for it. They've trained for it. And that they're even prepared for the 5-alarm fires. It just makes news because it's so out of the ordinary and extraordinary, but they're still successful in those endeavors. So that's like another aspect of getting rid of the anxiety, but also like with the concerns, I find that I am motivated a lot by a moral compass. I could be working for big corporations. It's the same thing, but they call it enterprise resiliency. I have decided that small businesses who by and large do not even know what business continuity is deserve to know this. These people all deserve to have their dreams considered. And they also, and everybody who works for them. So if your concern is, I want to take care of my employees, you should be doing business continuity because you're ensuring that your doors will always be able to open and make money, regardless of the interruption, big or small.
Yeah. You were saying this to me last time when we were prepping for the show. If you don't take that sort of proactive stance, then you deserve to tell all of your employees and everybody that's depending on you that you're running a hobby, not a business. You're just you're running a profitable hobby.
Yes.
Yeah.
It may not be profitable for long, right? Because it's just a hobby. You're not willing to do the work to actually make yourself sustainable. And when you have people investing in you and your clients who are expecting to get something from you, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, no, I got to close because this thing happened, or I wasn't prepared for this. Yep, sorry. It's not your career. It's not your vocation. You have a larger responsibility you owe to a community that is bigger than your bank account. And you need to just tell people like, hey, if you want a job with us, just know we're not prepared for any type of disaster. So if a hurricane comes, you may not have a job. Be prepared to apply for unemployment. Like
imagine saying that to your employees, like one of those honest commercials that they do as a joke, right? Like, hey, I wasn't actually thinking about the future. I'm just enjoying taking the money right now. Right. It sounds not only ridiculous, it sounds irresponsible when you say it like that. And there's some level that business owners need to take that into account. Actually, in my when I was at Lockheed and I ran my team, one of the first things I did is I put up a whiteboard on my wall, and I wrote at the top of it the excuse board. And I said, if you come up with an excuse that I've never heard of before, my dog gave me my homework, I had a kid, whatever. I was like, if you come up with an excuse that I've never heard of before, you have to write it up on the excuse board in your own handwriting, because I don't pay you to find excuses. I pay you to get work done. And it went on for about 2 years, and everybody's handwriting was up there. My handwriting was up there, right? It was kind of a King Arthur's round night type of a thing. HR came into my office randomly a couple of years later, and they were like, what is that? I was like, that's my excuse board. We don't find excuses anymore. They're all up here. And HR made me take it down.
Oh. There's this one guy I met. I actually loved his way of asking. Like, he diffused complaints from his employees, where he's like, I get that you're mad, but are you outraged? And
interesting.
He's like 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, I'm just mad. He's like, okay, then come back to me when you're outraged.
Oh, okay. Okay. So not only but come back to me when I like it.
The outrage is the litmus test. It's like, it's not that bad. Like, you have to be outraged in order for this to be an actual problem that's stopping you from doing your work.
That's interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to shift the conversation here. Who does continuity planning and who should do it? Like, when you work with folks, you work with people from all different company sizes, all the way from like a single individual up to corporate. Who should be doing corporate planning and who practically actually ends up doing it?
Everybody should. That's just full stop. Everybody should. I can't find a reason for someone to say like, yeah, I don't feel like being prepared. I really enjoy risk and not knowing what's going to happen and leaving it up to chance. There could be professional poker players, but even they prepare. They train, right?
Part of playing poker is memorizing all the probabilities of every imaginable hand. Right? Like that's, totally.
Yeah. So the 3 people who wind up doing business continuity, first is a forward-leaning leader who wants to be agile and pivot. That a good example of that as a massive franchise is Waffle House. So they've been doing this since the 1980s. And
Yes.
when they have like the Waffle House index for storms on
I
purpose.
know. Yes. I love this. Go good.
So the FEMA administrator, Craig Fugate, he was under Obama. He started referring to the Waffle House Index because where they would get together when they showed up to location is the Waffle House, because the Waffle House was usually open. And then they realized that they served different menus. So there's like the all the time menu, and then there's the yellow menu. The yellow menu, the owners back in the 80s were like, if we ever lost power and refrigeration, what can we do? Can we make a menu just of non-perishable foods? They're like, sure. So that's their yellow menu. So they're prepared for losing power and refrigeration, so they could still serve people. And then if they can't open, that means things have gone terribly sideways. So they're like, that's the red menu because nothing's being served. So Waffle House figured that out early. In restaurants here, when they had no water, they had to do it on the fly. They had to figure out to get recertified to reopen with non-potable water. What is a menu you can have that uses the least amount of water possible? If you were able to figure that out in advance, and like if a black swan type of thing happened where we had absolutely no water, what could we do what can we make? Right. The second type of person is a person standing on a burning platform going, oh my God, what do I do now? Because they've just been hit. I cannot do much for you now because it's already happened. But what I can do is make you prepared for the next time. That is like, there's going to be a next time. If it's not going to be another hurricane, it's going to be a earthquake. It can be just, water. It can be a whole lot of things because it's disasters and disruptions. As I say, you prepare for the next worst, not the next last. It's not always going to be the last thing that happened to you. And then the third party is who comes and does business continuity, is somebody who is being forced to by an outside entity. So if you need to get an insurance policy or a bank loan, that they require you to have business continuity plans, depending on the policy you're getting or the bank loan officer. It also helps you if you want to get good terms on your bank loan, because it proves that you've invested in your business that you're asking them to invest in. So that way, if you ever do make a claim, or you do never have to call in something, it's either not going to happen or be for a lot less than it might be otherwise. It's also regulatory compliance. So you might have to do like any business advisory firm that is a member of FINRA. Since 2016, they required. And then also, if you want a condition of sale, so Berkshire Hathaway requires all businesses they're acquiring to have a business continuity plan as part of the due diligence process.
Yeah. So I'm gonna burn in on this compliance thing. So I come from aerospace background. I think everybody knows that. I used to be a chief engineer at Lockheed and stuff. We used to do things. It used to be that the subcontractor, so there's the prime Lockheed, the subcontractor makes like the door fitting or some sort of little metal piece. And then sometimes there's like a second tier and a third tier supplier. It used to be that you had to have a plan to become CMC compliant. CMC is cybersecurity, basically. But now, since maybe mid Biden, it's been fairly recently, you now actually have to be implementing all these procedures, right? And so there's a shift where we're actually forcing folks to do it. So from a corporate compliance standpoint, what are the big certifications that you can help with?
So there's a lot of ISO certifications for business continuity or business continuity related type of things. And that by and large, just from a business perspective and standpoint, if you have a continuity plan or you're certified as ISO compliant in certain things, that means you're safer to do business with. I want to give a little asterisk though, because sometimes I've seen it. I've looked at compliance company products when they've done business continuity for things. It's a tick the box plan, and that is dangerous because it makes the auditor go away, but it doesn't actually make you more continuous, more resilient. And if you've actually not taken part in and looked at the plan, because the goal is not the actual plan. The goal is not the plan. You don't want the paper. It is the process of becoming more resilient and more prepared as a result of going through the planning process.
So you said this to me as we were prepping for this. Actually, I think we were just hanging out and you told me this. Not only is it worth it to prepare, there's a huge benefit to preparing. Like if I spend $1 in preparation, how much is that going to save me?
$7 on the back end.
$1 is going to give you $7 on the back end. What else in business? I don't think there's anything else in business where you can spend $1 and be guaranteed a 700% return on investment.
Yeah.
Like,
And even with business continuity for small businesses, if you have a small business and you have a business continuity plan, so even the general definition, 500 or less employees, right?
right.
If you register with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and FedEx, they have a program called the Readiness for Resiliency. You register with them, you say, hey, look, I have a plan. I have a business continuity. You have to show them this plan exists as part of your registration. They put it in a database. If you are ever in an area that's declared as a disaster, they will reach out to you proactively and give you $5,000 grant to help you recover.
All right. So you can get $5,000 free
Yep.
from FedEx and the Chamber, which are non-government entities, if you pre-register with your continuity plan.
Yep.
That is huge. Actually, I don't think I even knew that. That's totally worth it, right? So essentially that $5,000, that'd cover the price of the plan, or at least the price of the initial plan.
Yeah. And that alone, never mind the fact you're already inherently more secure and able to be resilient and withstand a lot more damage. So you don't even need that much money. But I mean, some people are like, well, $5,000, what's that? All those businesses I saw throw up GoFundMes, that would have helped to even just pay their employees who were suddenly laid off for a couple of weeks. Like $5,000 goes a lot further than you think it is, especially at a time when you have no incoming income.
Yeah. The other thing is, and I'm trying to find something around here. I'm just gonna hold this. Okay, so here's a deck of cards. Yeah. It's super easy to hold up this deck of cards, right? I think this is a zig, or maybe it's a ways to influence people analogy. At any rate, so here I am. I'm just holding up this deck of cards. Super easy. If I hold this deck of cards up all day, it's gonna rip my arm off, right? If I hold it up all week, and when you don't have the continuity planning in place, your brain, your subconscious, it knows all the things that can go wrong. And then it actively it's like Hopper for stress, and it's Hopper for things that might go wrong that you should be fixing, fills up. And then it's like actively rejecting stuff. So your brain is like, hey, Drew, that could go wrong. Hey, Drew, that could go wrong. Hey, Drew, listen, there's more things out there. Like there's so much stuff that could go wrong. I can't even manage it. And here you are. And a lot of the stress of being a small business owner is holding this continuity plan that I didn't make, much less the stuff I didn't buy. My wife and I, after was it COVID? I think it was COVID, 2019. I think it was. Like there was all the shelves went bare. I don't know if like all across the nation, because there wasn't the shipping and the logistics. And we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to buy an extra thing of flour. This is not like a food prepping plan. This is not like this big thing. We're just going to keep a week's worth of food on a shelf so that we have a week's worth of food. And so we just did that because of COVID. And I was like, I'm never going to not have a bag of flour on the shelf. So the stuff that we buy a lot of, bag flour, anyway, it's not, I'm just indicating, this is not, we didn't go crazy. We don't have like a bunker with cots and stuff. But then the next ice storm hit, and I literally chuckled to myself as my friends were going out to buy the French bread necessities, milk, bread, and eggs. Like I can't tell you how much calmer I've been since I did that. And we don't have, like I said, it's not like we're preparing for the apocalypse. We just have like a week's worth of food on the shelf, and it makes you so much calmer. Anyway, that's for me. But let's talk about this though, because a lot of people are like, all right, I don't really need to prepare because I bought insurance.
Yeah.
Is that a myth?
It is a myth for a couple of reasons. It's also the same as like buying a plan. I have a plan. Yeah, but you didn't exercise or train on it or practice it. So it's still not that great. But with business insurance, make a good analogy with car insurance. Does having car insurance make you less likely to get into an accident?
No.
Does having car insurance make you whole instantly if you're in a car accident?
No, I was in one like 5 years ago, and it was like 3 months because you have to go buy a new car. You have to find a new car. You have to get it titled. Yep. Yeah, it's a pain.
Yeah, a whole lot of things. So people are like, I got insurance. I'm like, okay, that's a financial assistance. But even with that, because it doesn't get rid of the risk, doesn't address the risk. All it does is talk about the financial risk. But even with business interruption insurance specifically, that is something a lot of people came with a reckoning with after Helene here in Asheville, because you had two areas that were flooded by the French Broad River and the Swananoa River. But downtown Asheville did not flood at all. It just lost all power and all water because it was a regional issue. Business interruption insurance will only pay out a claim if the loss of utilities is due to damage to the building. So none of them qualified for it.
So if a earthquake happened,
Mhm.
knocked out a bunch of power lines and it knocked out a bridge
Mhm.
that was 90% of your foot traffic to your building,
Mhm.
business insurance doesn't cover that. Well, business interruption insurance doesn't cover that.
Yeah, it depends on certain the earthquake could have knocked out the power, which it would be interruption to you. It's not necessarily like when you talk about the bridge is something separate, like business
Oh,
gets
okay.
but because you had mentioned that it knocked out the power or something else, because the earthquake did affect your building, right? So there is physical damage to your structure that had an issue. But there are ways to actually work around this if you knew how to do it in advance or thought about it. Like there's like an off premises power thing that you can get. So if the power goes off based off of nothing in your building, but your building's impacted, it'll pay out for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a different insurance policy that you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's one of the things where it's like, it's lawyer speak. So I'm like, you know what's in your policy, but you know what's not in your policy. They're two different very questions. So I always encourage people as part of business continuity, talk to your insurance agent every year. Don't just blanket like, yeah, we're going to renew. Actually say, okay, what does it cover? What does it not cover? And think about specifically within your industry, what you see a lot of. Like, don't make an assumption because you're a general contractor that general liability insurance covers everything you do. It doesn't. There are a lot of things in your industry that it does not cover. So you should be having those conversations every year because a lot of times regulations change as well. So what coverage used to be covered may not be covered anymore. And also one thing that people lost out here, they didn't get their building value figured out because they're like, oh, this is the value of my building. I go, yeah, you did the value like 5 years ago. It's a different value today, but we have from 5 years ago. So we're paying out your value of 5 years ago, not today, because you didn't update that.
Yeah. And that's fair. Like, I think we get mad at lawyers, we get mad at insurance companies, and we're like, you were just trying to mess. No, it's literally a contract in which everybody dug in and said, hey, this is what I'm willing to play at.
Mhm.
And that makes it fair because we all agreed to it. So yeah, I think that's beautiful. Well, not beautiful, but that's important to think about.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch over to some real stories because you got a new book out. The first book, of course, is How Not to Kill Your Business. That's a
Mhm.
great title. But the problem with that first book is it introduces you to the concepts of business continuity planning and it helps guide you through. But it needed a companion. It needed something else. And so you wrote, and this just came out. This is March 6th. This just came out.
Mhm.
The shit hits the fan.
Mhm.
Real stories from Asheville, Helene. So let's start with a real story here. Let's talk about what a food bank did and what they didn't do and how that impacted the community.
Okay. So on Thursday morning before the storm, I went to the gym and I saw something that made me flip out of my mind in the most excited way possible because I'm a nerd about business continuity. All of the trucks from the food bank that was located down the hill and on the river were all in the gym's parking lot. I was like, they're doing business continuity. They're doing something with business continuity. They moved the trucks. Oh my God. I took a picture of it to send my continuity friend. I'm like, look what they've done. Look what they've done. And I was like, I hope to God they put all their food in that truck. And I was like, when I go home, I'll try to call them. But of course, I actually did look up that day, but they're like, we're closed today for storm prep. I'm like, makes sense. I'll ask them next week, not realizing how bad it was going to really be because I didn't realize how bad our infrastructure was. I found out without being able to talk to them from reading a news article that all those trucks were empty. They left the food inside the warehouse. They just moved it to a higher level in the warehouse. And I was like, wow.
So those trucks could have probably taken a third of the food in the warehouse. I mean, warehouses are big, but yeah, and that food could have fed and supported a lot of people during the disaster, but instead they saved the trucks. Great job, good plans, but they forgot to think about the primary mission of their business, right?
Yes. And that's what you and I had discussed where, you have to look at what your mission actually is. So if your mission is to cure food insecurity, okay, great. But how do you do it? You receive donations, you give them out. So you might think I'm a logistics company. So my biggest capital investments and the things I need to be this company is a warehouse and trucks. So your mind is thinking that's the most important thing that you need to save. But can you cure food insecurity if all you have is a warehouse and a truck? No. Can you cure food insecurity with food donations, but no warehouse and no truck? Yes. It's a little more difficult. You'll find a way. So if they would have realized, like, okay, storm's coming, we have to do something with this food. This might, wait, we have trucks. We can save the food plus save the trucks at the same time by moving them.
Yeah. Or you could have called up a church that was higher on a hill somewhere and moved all the food into a temporarily into a gym or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not here to quarterback. I don't want to feel like we're piling on. But the point is the business continuity planning. It is a known thing that your city's going to have a flood. That's a thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
In my city, I know exactly where the floodwaters hit. We have a creek that runs through. So like, I can tell you today, I can tell you the 1,000-year floodplain in my city, right? And I actually literally bought a house above that number because in Texas, my house was at the bottom of a hill. And every time it rained, I thought about floodwaters every time it rained. Mm-hmm. And when I wasn't thinking about floodwaters, I kind of being at the bottom of two hills kind of made a saddle. I had plenty of mosquitoes to remind me that I had stagnant water somewhere. I just didn't know where. Mm-hmm. But yeah, flooding is a known thing. Running out of power is a known thing. If you are in a business of any sort, we live in a world in which terrorists exist. Things might interrupt your business that are knowable. We don't know which one. It's a black swan, but it's a knowable thing.
But I think the important thing, because you mentioned terrorists, right? So I did an exercise with some business owners where I put them through an exercise of a fake company. And I said, this is at Christmas time. So I did a Christmas theme. My Christmas theme was, your office is on the 5th floor of the Nakatomi building. It's Christmas Eve. There's a party going on upstairs that some terrorists show up to. So like Die Hard, right? And
yeah, I get it.
I was like, so what do you do? Because your business requires this, and this. And they talk through, like, that's what I do is I walk them through exercises for the thing. And the guy at the end goes, well, that's great. I'm prepared for a terrorist attack, but how often is that going to happen? I went, no, this is not a terrorist attack. It is an event that caused you not to have access to your operations. It doesn't matter what it is. The impact is what matters. I'm preparing you for the impact.
Well, and so someone might say, because of virtual work, I don't have to worry about those things anymore. So all of my people don't come in, and now you're laughing. Why is that so funny?
It reminded me of a conversation I had with the CFO. I was asking him what kept him up at night, and he's like, fishing. So we're talking about some stuff, and I was like, okay, cool. Let's talk about your physical structure and its security. He goes, we're fine. And because I'm a lawyer, I don't ever accept an answer. I was like, why? Why are you fine? Do you have a really robust plan? He goes, oh, no. Work fully remote. And I went, uh-huh. How many employees do you have? He goes, 120. I said, cool. Where are they located? Your state or all over the U.S.? He's like, oh, all over. I said, cool. Are they clustered anywhere? Houston, Tampa, North Carolina coast. He's like, oh, yeah, we have quite a few in the North Carolina coast. I go, do you know why I'm asking you? He's like, no. I said, hurricanes. He's like, oh, yeah. Like 4 years ago, there's a bad hurricane. Our team couldn't work for 10 days. I went, right. So remember, I asked you if you had a physical structure and you told me you didn't have one. He goes, yeah. I go, you have 120. And I watched the blood drain from his face.
Yeah. Yeah. So just because we used to have a phrase, there's a guy I'm specifically thinking of. His name rhymes with Rick. And ever confident, rarely competent. And the point there is, just because you haven't thought of something doesn't mean that risk doesn't exist. And that's exactly why you need a professional that thinks through this stuff. So real quick, because I want to, we are running kind of late on the show here. How did you help him think through that solving 120 facility problem?
Well, I made him realize that you have to treat, and this is for everybody who works from their home, even if they're not a company that is remote, but even if you're like a solopreneur kind of thing, you have to treat your home like it's an actual business structure. And a lot of people there's a huge disconnect there. It's like, oh, it's just this room in my house. No, your entire house is a business. And if you are located in various areas, there's different concerns. I very easily rattled off 3 that I know get hurricanes routinely, right? And there are other concerns that aren't hurricanes, but can still cause types of disruptions. We've got tornadoes, but tornado alley is shifting. So you think about that. You think about flooding. You can think about earthquakes and wildland fires. How are these all going to impact your operations? But it depends on where your operations are located. So saying I have a plan, but not it actually catered to the fact or considering the fact that you have different locations. It could even be, I have an office in the mountains and my warehouse is by the ocean. Those are two different concerns that you need two aspects of your planning for, because they're going to have different considerations coming to them. And I even did one of these fake exercises where I had a warehouse in Wilmington, North Carolina, like on the ocean. And the guy's like, can we start over? Can I not have my business be there? And I went, exactly. If you would do business continuity at the very start of your business, you would have considered this and factored it in. Remember, I talked about the $1 in advance saves you $7 in the back end. If you never had your warehouse built in the path of a hurricane, but you did it, and now you have to worry about all this, the cost for you to move everything and to get somewhere else is so much more expensive than you having not done it from the very beginning.
Yep. As you're talking about this, it reminds me of I'm not a cold weather guy. I enjoy my moderate climate here in Kentucky, and it gets too cold for me here sometimes. Mm-hmm. And but people love the cold. They love the beautiful snow of Colorado. That's me. Because we have snowshoes or snowsuits. We have hand warmers. Mm-hmm. We have ski chalets with patrol guys that can come get you if you fall down. In other words, we came up with all the contingencies you need to have a wonderful day on the slopes. And it turns what could be a survival situation, a very, very dire survival situation, into literally a playground that we travel, go have fun at, right?
They say there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices.
There you go. There's no such thing. I've not heard that. That's hilarious. That is true, though. That is true. Okay, well, we are running out of time. So, Erika, I'm going to give you the last 30 minutes, 2 minutes, something like, or 30 seconds, 2 minutes. Just kind of speak to the audience, tell them what you want to tell them, and then I'll close this out.
Yeah. So my drive, and even why I wrote my first book, How to Not Kill Your Business, it was intentionally to help people who don't have enough money to invest in a big, robust continuity plan. I get you thinking. And that's what I really, really like, is to get you thinking first and foremost in this way that makes you want to actually do something and go, or realize that you can do something. And that gets the ball rolling. And it's not that I was like, this is incomplete, I need a second book. I wasn't planning on writing a second book. I only wrote the second book because I saw what happens even if you have a continuity plan that made everybody hurt even more. And I'm like, this information needs to get out there. And I appreciate platforms such as yours, Drew, that brings me to people who get to learn about this. Because even if you don't ever contact me, and you should, because I have something for your listeners. I do have a PDF that I give as a template for crisis communications, because that's part of business continuity. If something happens to you that you have to be down, or your operations are disrupted ever so slightly, you have a way to communicate to the people who would be interested about the conditions you're going through and when they can expect them to be normal again. And because I'm a lawyer, I knew how to write it. So it says the right thing. It doesn't say too much. It doesn't say too little. It says the exact right amount. And so I invite your listeners just to, the banner's up there. So that email address, if you send me an email address, say, just listen to you on Drew's show, I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm going to put a little finer point to this for Erika. Listen, if you are a business leader, if you have a small business, if you have a medium business, if you have a business in which people are relying on you for their paycheck or critical services, if you have a family, if you have customers, if you are chasing your dream, hint, that's pretty much everybody listening to this show, you need to think through continuity planning. I, of course, have the show to help you learn how to stop working in your business and start working on your business. But if you are, especially if you're above $1 million, if you're above 3 million, you need to reach out to Erika and ask her, what do I need to do? She and I are good friends. Tell her that you saw her on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. She'll sit down and have a short conversation with you. Email her here at info@EAASC. That's Erika as a Service Corporation. And she's going to help you out. This is not scary. This is going to turn a winter terror into a winter wonderland. So you can have a little bit of fun. It's simple to start. Just start making those little baby steps and trade in that stress for the confidence you get when you've thought through the contingencies. So when everybody else is panic buying and freaking out, you're comfortable knowing that you're already taken care of. And so with that, we are out.